everyone, Brienne here. Today I'm going to be demonstrating how to add some texture and vibrant colors to your summer colorings. So I just filled it in. I did some bloom color in the background, and everything else is just the basic fill. So this is what I call just getting prepared to add the details. So now I start shading and adding texture. Airbrush isn't necessarily for texture, but it does add shading very well when you want to layer the texture on top. So when I'm coloring a piece, I think about dimension. So that's why I do a process like this, where I get my preliminary colors down, then I shade, then I texture, then I highlight. So that's what I'm going to be doing right now. So I got my airbrush, perfect. And we're just gonna add a little bit of shading. I jump back between automatic, freehand, advanced quite often, mostly automatic and freehand though. So I'm just gonna shade near the base of the trunk, just swiping my pencil ever so gently. So it doesn't need to be perfect, but you just kind of have to think about where your light's gonna come from in your picture. So I just shaded the middle. I'm leaving the outside light. I'm gonna do the same to the leaves. I'm gonna do some shading. You can color match to pick up the exact color. Let's say it got lost in translation, color match. And then you can deepen the shade on the bar here, and it'll help you pick a color that's reasonable to add some shading and detailing with. Shading and highlighting is an easy way to add depth without even adding texture if you don't want to, or you don't have the time to go all elaborate. Just shading and adding some highlights can make a huge difference in the depth of your picture. And just be aware of your color choices too, because color choices really make your picture pop. Sometimes it doesn't take a lot of colors. You can do a monochrome or something simple, but the colors just go really well together and pop nicely. If you can get your color choices down, that's honestly half the battle. So for textures, I have a few favorite tools that I absolutely love using. And one of those tools is pencil. It's free for everyone to use, and honestly, I use it a lot. Pencil is one of my favorite tools. Even with all the new brushes we've added and everything, it is my go-to for adding texture. And Crayon, that is a newer brush that got released maybe a year or two ago, and it's a fan favorite for me. I love playing with the opacity and the brush size to really come up with some interesting textures. And then I'm gonna try and use sand. Sand is one that I don't use very often, I'm gonna be honest, but it does come in handy for scenes like this, beach scenes and whatnot. I think with all the brushes, it's just getting the hang of the textures and the brush size and kind of knowing how to gauge those to make them work effectively for you. So here we go. I added a little bit of texture in with the seashell here. And I'm gonna add some more texture over here with the coconut. And like I said, just color match. And play with your brush size is very important, because you are gonna get different effects based on the size of brush you're using. I do jump back and forth between automatic and freehand. And the reason is when you come to barriers like this, I want a clean edge. I don't want it stopping and then having to keeping on following through. So I jump back and forth because if I put on freehand, I can have a smooth stripe and it doesn't get interrupted. So another thing I like to do is mix colors in that normally wouldn't, that you think wouldn't go. Like with tropical leaves and stuff, I like adding orange and yellow to the tropical leaves. So I'll go to the airbrush and it also helps blend. And I think one of the main things to keep in mind is to not press too hard. With art, you want to apply pressure as it's needed, not going overboard. So there's some simple sand texture. And if you look up close, you don't see it too much when you're far away, but if you look up close, you can see that there is some natural texture happening within the sand now. And I'm gonna use other tools to make it a little bit more vivid as well. And just because it's sand doesn't mean you have to use it for sand. I just wanted to in this instance. So let's go to crayon. Let's add some more texture to this trunk with the crayon. And you'd be surprised. Crayon is also very strong, so I'm trying to get texture, but I don't want it to be too stark on me here. Adding some highlights on the outside. Play with your brush size. I'm barely touching and my opacity is all the way down. Like that's how strong it is. So I get why some people have struggled with it because it's very delicate using the crayon, I find. But when you get the hang of it, it's amazing for so many things. You can see how I'm mixing the pencil with the crayon to blend it out, because the crayon was a little bit strong for me here and I got a nice highlight out of it. But now I'm going over with the pencil and simply just sliding it over very, very gently, like I'm barely even touching, and I'm just kind of blending. And the way that your lines go will also help create that look of texture. Now I'm going to do some of these tools down here. And there's ways to add gloss too. So a lot of times I'll stay on freehand and I will go right across through all the colors to get a highlight. And I just find that works. So I'm not even gonna shade the ball. I'm just gonna do a really stark highlight through it on freehand mode. Another great tool to use for texture is the paintbrush, but most of the tools when I am making texture, I use at extreme low opacity, and I do like just light strokes, like, you know, and it's on freehand mode right now and I'm doing it straight through everything. And I just put it on automatic. Doing texture and highlights at the same time. This is usually how I decide how much shading I'm gonna do. Sometimes on certain items I don't want as much shading. I just want more of the highlights and the lines. All this texture for this luggage was done with the paintbrush, and I used some of that technique on the beach ball as well. And it's just playing with the brush, going back and forth, hopping back and forth from automatic mode to freehand. And you don't have to always stay in the lines to create texture. I went right through things on freehand mode to create those lines, to create that texture. So there's lots of ways of achieving it. And it's just having fun, playing around, and figuring out what works for you. Another brush that I use for texture as well is glitter on low opacity. Almost everything I use for texture is on like extreme low opacity. Like I barely ever turn up the opacity on anything. I just find you have a lot more control and you can create what you're trying to create without going overkill with it. So now I'm mixing in the paintbrush with the crayon I put over here. Layering is big. Like I said earlier, layering those textures is huge to creating visual interest. Now I'm just going around doing finishing touches, adding a little bit more highlight, a little bit more shading where I think it's needed, just kind of getting ready to finish up. One thing I do sometimes when I add texture is I take it away too, like on smooth surfaces like water. So I'll use the pencil because it has good dispersion, like it covers a large part of the area and it kind of makes a neat effect. So I'll go ahead in with the pencil and do that. And then I'll go in with the white and add some highlights, or the orange even. Sometimes I add colors from the sky and the water. And that is a nice way of getting a cool effect too. So you can add a little bit of orange, even a little bit of yellow if you want. Back to the white and just kind of blend it through. Now you see that there's texture in the water. If you want to minimize that texture, what I usually do is I'll go over to my tools and I'll go over to blur or blend. But blur, I like a little bit more for this particular purpose. I'll turn down the blur amount. I don't want it too much. Turn up the brush size to about there. And then just lightly kind of go over the water. So you see how you still maintain some of that texture, but it blends it. So it kind of looks like sparkles on the water almost. Again, I have it turned down. I'm very lightly just going over top to blend some of it out, but I don't want to blend it all out. I still want some of that texture in the water. I just want it to look more smooth because it's water, right? White edges really do make the item that you're highlighting pop. Or light colors. And sometimes I layer the colors. You can see I just did yellow and now I'm doing white because white really makes it pop. I always try to make like those gradient colors flow together, and it really does make things pop at the end of it. At the end of your coloring, you'll notice that you'll have created a unique effect by doing this. So I do use blur a lot. I add texture and then I take a little bit away, but I don't want to take it all away, and I try to be careful how I use it, because you don't want to do all that work and then blur it all out completely. It's just nice to use it for certain areas, for certain things like water, things that you want to glisten and be a little shiny, and it does have its purpose for sure. And you can layer the blur too, so you could blur, layer texture, blur, layer texture. I'd be careful, but it's definitely a cool way to make interesting effects. Okay, and there's our cute, cozy little summer scene with texture and smoothness and water, and I think it turned out to be a nice little summer scene for sure. So now if you want to check your outline, I kept it at brown. I'm probably going to keep it at brown, but I do like to experiment with it when I'm actually done a coloring, because sometimes I find a color I like more, like, or I want to lighten up the brown. I actually like the orange, the like dark orange a little bit more, maybe like right about there. Red would look good with this too, but I think the orange is where it's at. The orangey brown is where it's at for this particular piece. So that's it, guys. A really simple way, fun way to add texture to your pieces. I'm pretty much done here. I might add a couple dots, fix it up a little bit more, but other than that, really fun way to add texture is layering different textures, layering different brushes. I used paintbrush here, I used pencil here, I used sand, I layered all these different textures together. I blurred them out a little bit, but kept them pretty solid with their textures. If we look, you can still see the paintbrush strokes. You can still see the kind of corrugated paper texture from the pencil. So it's all still there. It doesn't need to be super strong to have an impact, but it will have an impact the more you layer and the more you play with textures. So this has been a tutorial today on summer textures and just playing with colors and playing with textures, playing with brushes mostly. If there's another topic that you would like to see showcased, please let us know. It helps us pick out topics to display for you guys and help you guys with in the future. This is Brianne from Pixite. I hope that this tutorial was useful to you guys. We'll see you again next time, everybody. Take care and happy summer and happy coloring.